My name is Brian Stewart. The sun is right in my face, so I'm going to do this. My name is Brian Stewart. I publish a magazine called Phantasm Presents. Our first issue was George Romero, and there she's got one right there. Look at that. Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. My God, that's a beautiful magazine. Amazing work. If I did say so myself about my own work. Anyway, we started back in February working with George, and it's officially licensed magazine. And at the time, we didn't even know he was ill. He thought he was just having problems. And so he was there and he was around and sort of overseeing what we were doing in the beginning, but he didn't get to see the final product. But we just got it out recently, and it turned out really well. And we had such an outpouring of help from so many people that were working on all of George's different films throughout the years, and we actually couldn't even cram all the information in one issue. But see, the original plan or nucleus for Phantasm was each issue was going to be a special self-contained issue that was hyper-focused on one subject. It was actually three of us that used to be at Fangoria magazine. Fangoria died, and we wanted to keep making monster magazines, so we started Phantasm. So that was the plan. And after George passed away, we obviously had to make some adjustments. And we're going to go ahead and do a second follow-up issue. It's going to be number 2. It's going to be 1.5, because number 2 is actually going to be a different subject. And we're going to keep the magazine going as planned, but we felt like we owed it to George's legacy to finish out the rest of the content that we have. And so there's a little bit more we're working on, but there's a lot more stuff out there, and we could probably fill 3 or 4 more magazines before it even started feeling padded, in my opinion. So anyway, for some reason qualifies me to be on a trailer in a park in Evans City. So here I am. We're just waiting on the guys, and we're going to start the panel in just a few minutes, but I thought I'd come up here and pimp my stuff. So if you guys are interested in the magazine, I'm inside the main pavilion here, and we're hawking them all weekend. And I know you guys are looking forward to the panel. As soon as they're here, we'll ask some questions. I'll try to make it as unredundant as possible, because you get this many years removed from a film. You do these conventions, horror conventions. You do this weekend in this city. Eventually, the same questions are going to be asked, whether it's in a magazine, it's in an internet, blog thing where they've done these interviews, or they've done a convention panel. So there's always a redundancy, but we'll just try to make it conversational and fresh. And if you guys have some questions, throw your hands up. Just come up here and we'll see if we can include you. Okay? Thanks, guys. This is the part where you clap and say, "My God, he's good." Yeah.
Well, I see we've got our celebrities on their way.
Ready now? Cool.
Yeah, I see we've got another edition. Laurie Cardell's here. And if you all know if you don't know who Laurie is, her dad was Bill Cardell. And I'm sure she's got some interesting things to talk about in relationship to her beloved father, Chili Billy. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Gary Killar, John Amplis, Anthony DeLeo, and Laurie Cardell. I only see three up there, and I don't see Anthony DeLeo. But
Gary Clark's coming.
okay. Oh, Gary Killar, that's the one we don't have.
He's coming.
Nobody wants Gary up here, do they? Surely not.
Well, I'm going to turn this over to our moderator and the panel, and I'll get back to you in a little while.
All right, well, I'm still Brian Stewart, as I mentioned earlier. That hasn't changed. You guys want to go down and just introduce yourselves?
Sure. Oh, hi, John Amplis.
Hi, everybody. I'm Laurie Cardell.
Anthony DeLeo.
I wasn't supposed to be at this one, but I thought, you know what? We should all be together.
We should.
We're going to do another question, another one tomorrow, so we'll try to all get us all together again.
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
He's got an entourage.
Oh, good.
Look who decided to show up.
Gary! so glad. Oh, Gary, finally.
I guess we should wait on Gary. Yes, sir. Hey, buddy. How are you?
You can tell we're all good friends, right? Yeah. Here.
No, you're in the middle. You should be in the middle. You really should.
Sorry, guys.
It's on the bottom.
Hello? Hello.
Let's just lots of feedback. Let's just go down the line and do the basic stuff. Gary, how did you get involved with the movie originally? I know the story, but
I got involved with, I just want to get this right so I have the right frequency modulation here, like I know what I'm talking about. No, I was, I was kind of based out of New York City, and my agent was in New York, and he told me about, the George Romero. I really wasn't super familiar with George. I knew that, Night of the Living Dead, of course, was by then even a classic. And said, they want to see you. And I had a connection with George's wife, Christine, who went to college with a lovely lady named Nancy Hopwood, who married John Roddick, a wonderful Australian actor, director, and all kinds of things. And they produced a show I had done off Broadway. And Nancy said, you got to take this meeting. My agent said, you got to take the meeting. And I walked in and met George, and very nice, relaxed meeting. And, just so I don't bore people, originally, George read me for the part of Rhodes. And that was it. It went fairly well. I'm not going to say it was the greatest reading I ever did, but it went fairly well. And, the description of the character. And then somehow, as time went on, George figured out, let's take the Napoleonic little guy with the stick figure build and put the big bandoliers of ammunition across his chest, and he'll be the martinet, he'll be the dictator, and you'll play Steele. And I guess, guys, I really don't know what to say. I've been very fortunate. I was able to make a living in a business where a lot of people can't, and I would never believe that I would be sitting here 32 years later with whatever we've all done, but it would be this film that is greatly appreciated because of the genius and the vision of George Romero. So I'm very, very grateful. I'm very humble about that. I mean, to me, this is a family. I wrote about it, and maybe tomorrow I'll be able to read some stuff I wrote about what it was like to work with George, get the part, see the movie finally age like a fine wine and become what I really believe is the best of the original trilogy. And for that, I'm very thankful. And this is part of my family. It really is. Thank you.
Okay, bro. Okay. I'm from Pittsburgh, and I remember, is this on? Is this happening? I hear something. And he was just about to do Night Riders. I don't know what year that was. 78, 79. Anyway, I happened to.
Summer 1980.
And George is just very open to new people, and I was lucky enough. What's that? Oh, I'm hearing things. And he was open to seeing new actors, and I was very fortunate that he put me in Night Riders, and like Gary said, it became a family. And when Day of the Dead came around, it was just a great opportunity, and I was very fortunate to get it, and I was happy that I did get it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lori Cardell. And anyway, I have a big mouth, so I may as well just talk like this. I was, can you hear me, everybody? Yeah. Okay. Of course, my father is Bill Cardell, Chilly Billy, and he had a show called Chiller Theater in Pittsburgh. And Dad was one of the first horror hosts in the country, along with a couple other of them. But George was making this movie, this little movie, and he asked my dad if he would be in it. And so my father said, of course. And my dad was such a wonderful man. He kept plugging Night of the Living Dead on TV. And so even just, we were at the Museum of Modern Art in New York last year, and my father had just passed, and George credited my dad with his early career because my father really kind of put it on a map of sorts to get it, to get it moving. Anyway, so I went to the original Night of the Living Dead opening, and I was like in the 7th grade or 8th grade, and I was terrified. I hated watching my father's show. I hated those movies. The only kind of movies I could see was like Tonka the Turtle that would fly. I mean, I wasn't afraid of that one. And my father, anyway, so I stood in the back the whole movie. I stood in the refreshment area because I was so anxious. And anyway, so then what happened was, fast forward. Let me use your.
Yeah, what's humming?
Fast forward.
He's gonna work on it.
Yeah, fast forward many years. I went to Carnegie Mellon, where George went to school, and studied to be an actress there. And I think it's too close to that. That's why. Yeah. So anyway, I was doing a play. I hadn't seen George all those years, although my dad was friends with George. I was doing a play in New York called Reckless, and the character by Craig Lucas, and the character is on stage the whole time. And George was there along with Richard Rubenstein, who was the producer at the time. And they saw me in this play, and we all went out to dinner after, and it was really lovely. And George said, I'm writing this script, and I'd like you to play the lead female. And it was really the only time I never auditioned. It was a wonderful, and I think it was just because, it was just an honor to be asked to play that part. It was a wonderful part. And I think because he saw in Reckless, this character had to sustain, it was actually a comedy, a serious comedy. But I think because she was able to sustain this whole play, I think that's why he felt confident, and that was quite an honor to be offered the role. And then the whole fact that Dad did Night of the Living Dead, and it was just kind of a perfect blend. Never liking horror movies at that time, and ending up being in one was just, and I've come to be a horror fan now. I love it. But at the time, I was just too scared as a kid. So that's my story.
Hi, my name's John Amplis, and no, that's the wrong start. I was introduced to George a couple of films earlier than Day with Martin, and not unlike Laurie's experience. I was on stage, and George saw a production that I was in, and said, I have a script that I'm writing, and I think you might be good for it.
That was a great movie, wasn't it, Martin?
Yes.
And so that led to the opportunity to work on Dawn of the Dead, which I did a little bit of casting for, and then after Dawn, what comes after Dawn?
You were Night Riders.
Night Riders came after Dawn. Right? Yes. And I was lucky enough to do Night Riders. And then I was also lucky enough to get a call for Day of the Dead. And that's how it worked. Once I kind of got into this family, and that's really what this is. George's legacy is really about creating a family and friendships with talented, collaborative people. That's what he did absolutely the best. And so I was lucky enough to, after Martin, I would just get telephone calls, which I really appreciated, rather than to have to go through the audition process. So
You also got to wear a corpse suit and Creep Show.
did. Oh, Creep Show.
Yeah, and you were
yeah.
and you were let's see, the Dark Half, right? Did
I
you do
was
some
in
work in the Dark Half too?
I was
Yeah,
acting partner to Tim Hutton
right.
when he was on screen and had to
Yeah.
play himself. Yeah. So, yeah, I had a long time and wonderful time with all of these films that I've worked on with George. And I agree with Gary. I think, and don't get upset, Dawn, fans, but Day for me is really the epitome where I think he was supposed to go with those kinds of films. So yeah, that's kind of my story.
Well, Day was, I think, was the strongest. It was the most pissed off, angry of the films, and it really was, I think, a really great reflection of what was going on in the country at the time.
I think too.
You know?
I would add that the role Laurie played as Sarah, really one of the, if not the first strong female lead characters in a horror film, which had to that point so often, kind of talked down to the women and to a more, I don't know what the words are, but I think her role was a pivotal jump in our consciousness about how to treat each other and equality, and so these are things that George did with all of his films. There was always some kind of social, political, perhaps, undertone that made sense both to the time and to all of his films. That they were layered with sociological and psychological issues that we all struggle with. I think too that's part of his genius, is that he's not making slasher movies. He's actually making films that have pertinence in the world and meaning, and that's one of the things I cherish about having had the opportunity to work in George Romero film.
They all felt like a mirror of the time, didn't they? Like he would just hold up a mirror to the news and
Absolutely.
I wonder
throw
what kind
in
of
some
movie he'd
zombies.
make now. I mean, if it was part of the trilogy. George, it's funny because he moved to Canada because he was kind of disgusted.
Yeah, he was
with-
sort of done, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was done with the United States in a way. He was always ahead of his time.
You, in a way, Land of the Dead now seems very
Land
prophetic,
of the
doesn't
Dead
it?
is unbelievable how
just
it
so
feels
prophetic.
like now.
Yeah.
Because of the rich people and the people that were living in the high rise, and then the zombies, couldn't get in there, and it does feel like now. I was going to say that because I've been thinking about that.
Well, I did want to say one thing to you guys. I know a lot of people were wondering where Joe is, and Joe actually called me yesterday as I was coming up, and he has got viral pneumonia. He sends his best to everybody, and he had me record some audio. He really wanted to have a bit for everybody to hear, and I tried. I did. I'm driving. I'm trying to record audio. I'm like, Jesus, Joe, I'm doing my best here, But he wanted everybody to know that he really appreciates that you guys have given so much life to these films and his career and George's legacy. And I'm paraphrasing, but he was really heartfelt, and he was really disappointed that he couldn't be here, and he just wanted me to make sure I told everybody that he really appreciates you guys. And he also said to be sure and send my love to all of you guys too, of course. Let's talk a little bit about the mine itself and your wonderful working conditions. Did any of you guys actually make it out unscathed? Anybody make it out not getting sick?
I didn't get sick.
Really? You didn't get sick at all?
No, a lot of people did.
Yeah.
And they brought Dr. Feelgood onto the set, and then that whole murder with the nurse a couple weeks later, if you remember, Elwood City and everything. But I never. Oh yeah, sure. It was so bizarre, but you know what, Laura? I'm trying to remember, but they brought Dr. Feelgood on to give a lot of people shots because they were losing their voice and getting this. Yeah, but it was some weird. It was like Peyton Place in the mine, and the nurse. You know, the nurse died. No, the nurse killed. I don't know what happened. I can't remember, but you could probably go to, get a newspaper from there and go to the files. It was really kinky and weird. Really kinky and I do. Yeah. As the late great Ralph Moreira would say, Natalka. Yeah, where's Natalka? I mean, it was so weird. And then, but I did, Brian. I swear, and John, at least, I didn't get sick. I really didn't. So I think we had strong immune systems, because God, that place was dank, and the bats, the fake ones on the string and the real ones.
And the temperature, it was cold as could be.
Oh yeah, God.
I was in a t-shirt on the ground. So
There's no way that helped anything.
And you can see everybody's, I don't know, even in the scenes, some of the scenes, you can see the people's breath coming out. Yeah. I had a bad case of bronchitis, and I was really sick in the scene that I shot with right outside of the Ritz, and I was sitting with Terry and Jarlin, and we were talking outside of the Ritz, and I had 104-degree temperature in that scene. I was so sick, and I could hear it in my voice, but yeah, there was like the limestone that was coming out of the caves. It was damp, and there were 27 miles worth of lakes inside the cave.
Wow.
I think,
Amazing. Let me open it up to you guys. Do you have some questions?
I do know that Larry could probably find out about that murder.
I bet he could.
I'll never forget it.
Yes, sir.
Is anybody claustrophobic?
Was anybody claustrophobic?
Not like, maybe if it was a coal mine. I mean, I have great respect for these people, who get in a coal mine and you hunch over and you get dirty and things blow up and you get killed. But there was a lot of room in the mine, the way it was constructed. It was really kind of dug out right. And,
They had like 20-foot ceilings.
oh yeah. And then, part of the mine, a lot of times where we ate in the big meeting room where, we had the meetings and the confrontations with the military and the scientific community, it was kind of finished, with lighting and the floors. And however, I was in Manchester, England a year ago, and the promoter was wonderful. He loves coming here, and he was back here last year, and he did a retrospective and kind of a memoriam piece, which was really quite touching and profound. He went to the mine, and I was watching him do this wonderful piece on the mine itself, but it was all whitewashed. The walls are white. I mean, remember how? It's like,
Totally different.
it's white. It looks clean.
It's not a cave.
Yeah, it's not. It's very different. And he said that the people who ran it were kind of phasing out if there was one or two left, and now it's a different crew, and it's harder to get in there. And like if we wanted to take a tour or maybe do our own documentary,
Now, I know these are abstract numbers, but given the idea of the size of the mine versus how much of the space you guys utilized, what would you say the crew and the cast actually had to use of what was there?
Oh, very small part of it. Very small part. Because we got dressed and our makeup was in an area that was like it was finished, kind of. Set off as the side and offices, and then you walk out into the cave. It was right there, pretty much. Once in a while,
so all the locations were pretty well together. You didn't have to run all over the mine to do it.
There were times where we had to take the golf carts way out.
Okay.
A couple of the scenes.
Okay.
Actually, where the corral was, that was pretty good.
Yeah. Now, everything except the last part of the film, that was all actually in the same area, right? Now, the ladder, that's actually not part of the mine, correct?
Oh, it was.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. For some reason, I
That
was
was a
thinking.
silo. It was an
Okay.
old Nike site. I believe it was
Okay.
a part of a Nike site, which was very big when I was a kid in the 50s and early 60s. I think it was a Nike, right? Am I right, John?
Yeah.
And there was that silo with the ladder. Yeah, that
For
was.
some reason, I had in my mind that the ladder was not the
No,
same.
no,
set.
no. That
Well, I'm
that
glad
was
I learned
real.
something in front of everybody.
And Ralph and I one day, we had maybe an hour or more. They were sitting up for another shot, and Ralph and I had the golf cart, and we of course had the lamps on the helmet.
Yeah.
And we took a little ride off the beaten path, and we said, let's go see what this mine is really, really like. And we got stopped by a guard. I'll never forget this. And he said, where are you guys going? I said, well, nowhere really. Lori mentioned this. Apparently there was a lot of water, bodies of water in the mine, which we didn't know about. And he said, you know what's going to happen, guys? You're going to go there with this golf cart with a winky-dinky light, the light's on your head. You'll go into the drink, and you'll panic, and you could be this far from the edge, and you'll never grab it. You'll be flat, and you'll drown. And then I said, okay, the guy's probably right. I'm sure he was. And we went down another way. We avoided him. And then what I really remember about that place, and I'm sure I'm making more of this, but there were all these carved shelves out of the rock. And I looked up, and all I saw was cardboard boxes full of United States government issue gas masks. And I go, what's really going on here? And then there were all those RVs that were like brand new that, okay, are they just storing them there? Or maybe could somebody go and live in there after they screw the world up enough and we're all paying the price, and they could go in there and hide? Kind of like White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, which has now been exposed, but we know there's other sites, I'm sure, for those wonderful people. I don't know.
Like in George's Land of the Dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That might have just been the run through to figure out how they really wanted to do it when they did it for real. Huh?
Yeah, and I just want to say one more thing, and John, everybody's referred to this, but you think about George, and you take land, you look at the whole world, and you know what? I think one of the things that George was maybe prophetic about was how would we really handle the world in a really truly apocalyptic situation? And you know what the answer is? Not well.
No, we'd eat each other.
We wouldn't handle it very well.
No, people are terrible. We'd all turn on each other.
Yeah, it's
I'd
really,
turn on every one of you.
but that's a great part of it. It's a great part of it. It's so amazing to me how prophetic and forward thinking he really was.
It's amazing. And it's amazing. You're talking about the mine. It's amazing the production value that was down there. It sounds like it was just candied with just tons of money they didn't have to spend to decorate the set, basically.
Well, they actually built the corral.
Okay, yeah.
They built that, Cletus Anderson with the set designer. And, but the thing about, I was going to say something. It was just the atmosphere just lent itself so much to all of us as far as acting. And, and we became close because we were all kind of in this together, this underground. Yeah. When you said about being claustrophobic, I remember the first time I went in there, because you drove in, and then you had to go across this little road to get into the mine. You walked in, and I remember thinking, oh my God, it's kind of the first, when I first went to New York City, all these buildings, I thought, where is the sky? Where is the sky? I did have a little bit of a panic attack thinking that we were in this cave. The other thing is that they kept, they still make a lot of the original not films, but soundtracks of like Simon and Garfunkel, the Beatles. There were a lot of things stored in there because of the temperature. And it was, people do kept their
So Terry was
art.
telling the truth. It's all down.
Yeah, there
it's
was
all
a lot
down
of stuff
here.
down there. Yeah. So when he said, it was in here, really, seriously.
And speaking of, let's get out of the mine for a second. I've talked to Jarlath about this, and I've talked to Terry about this. What can you tell us about when you shot in Florida? How was that experience? I'm sure it was much nicer than a hole in the ground.
Yeah, my daughter. It was like, wow, this is a new movie.
Let's juxtapose a little here.
Yeah, it was terrific. I love the way they did the shot of the silo, the elevator. We shot that going down in the elevator, that was actually the first day of shooting. We shot that in Monroeville. And it was a freezing day, but it was a sunny day. And there was an old missile site outside of in Monroeville, right outside there. And then when we were in Florida, they made the top of the silo in this field. And so there are two different shots. One where Tim got his, ripped up and eaten. And as it's going down, that was shot the first day of shooting in Monroeville. But it was wonderful to be in the sun. And my daughter was, at that point, she was almost a year old, and she took her first steps, So it was very special. And it was beautiful, and it was just incredible when we went to the old Fort Myers, and that whole town was, with the zombies coming up. It was so riveting to act truly in a real set. When you're on stage, you're doing all the, of course, it's totally different, but this was real practical stuff. Unlike CG or anything, no CG. It was all real and well done.
That's it. I felt great.
Hello.
Florida was a real break for me and for, I think, all of us, really. And we did the helicopter thing. That's when I got a little funny. Just the beginning of riding that until you got used to it. But I think we all enjoyed the beach a little. I know I did.
That beach
It doesn't sound terrible.
No, it
Beautiful.
wasn't terrible. It was really nice. And it was Sanibel Island where the beach
so
was,
beautiful.
and Fort Myers.
Let's see another question out here.
What's your favorite memory of George?
Yeah, they're asking about your favorite memory of George. I was staying away from those questions because we were going to do something on Sunday. And I knew that.
All right, I can ask a different question.
Turn into. Is that
I can
okay?
ask a different
Is that okay if we
question.
jump over that? I was just trying to save that until the memorial.
We need to think about
Yeah,
that. When did you
that could
guys
get
first-
heavy quick.
Okay, when did you guys first realize this would have such a cult following?
I never did.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
You showed up and there were pup tents and.
I'm astonished, actually, by the fact that, I started working with George 41 years ago.
Wow.
And these films,
And you're only 45,
and
right?
I'm only 46
Okay, sorry.
plus, that these films are so revered, are still introduced to new audiences, and have this lasting, they'll go on forever. And I can't tell you how lucky I feel as an actor, certainly, and as a friend of the man that created this legacy of hardcore, well done film work. It's astonishing to me. And it's a surprise when it first kind of happens and you start to see the momentum of the fan and the appreciation that George's films get. But then to continue that, for 41 years I've been watching and paying attention to George Romero's films. And that's going to continue in the lives of all the people that come here and all the people around the world that have a high regard and appreciation for good filmmaking. And I think that's what George's legacy is really all about. This man is a genius filmmaker. And I couldn't be more proud to be a part of it.
And he didn't have to go to Hollywood.
And he didn't have to go to Hollywood.
He didn't.
He kept fighting Hollywood.
Yeah.
But he would try. They'd want to work with him. They wanted to change everything and make it just too homogenized, too commercial. He had a hard time.
Yeah, and then there was some guy named Harvey, I think, that always wanted to talk to George. Right? Just kidding. Just kidding.
Harvey Keitel, right? Not the other guy. Obviously. Yeah. No libel up here. Let's do
Just
a
like it
couple
is.
more questions and we'll keep it sort of brief. Lawrence has got something.
All right. When you all reached the set for filming, and you eventually made your way to the special effects workshop, what were your impressions of these young guys doing all these effects? Because a lot of them went on to very big careers in horror.
Oh my God! Yeah, it would be my
What were your
first
impressions?
response.
Some kid named Greg Nicotero was involved,
I'm
I think,
really
right?
glad you brought that up because I think that's one of the things that make Day real to me, anyway. We were away from the days of gray makeup. We have moved on to something more substantial and certainly far more darker and much more real in terms of special effects. I think it's a real testament to Tom Savini and Greg Nicotero and the entire crew that worked on this movie that they brought, without CGI, they brought to the screen something that looked absolutely real and satisfied all of the needs that the movie needed to have in it. I think it was absolutely amazing. And I keep wondering why Greg doesn't call and let me be a zombie and Walking Dead.
Yeah, it's amazing if you go back and watch that film now, knowing how Tom did it.
Oh yeah.
Knowing exactly what it all looked like, what it smelled like, how many pounds of this blood, how many gallons of blood, and this is where the tube was, and you watch it and you're still like, Jesus Christ, they're really pulling Joe apart.
They did a great
they're
job.
really, it's amazing.
Tom's an absolute genius.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing is, I don't know about you, but sometimes with CG, I feel like I'm watching a movie and all of a sudden, oh, here goes the cartoon. You know, it kind of feels like that sometimes. Maybe I'm just old, but yeah, that was like one of the last practical big films, really, that there was. Yeah.
I love Ray Harryhausen's work, so that's very different.
I do too. But he's of a period
Yes.
of time. And if it wasn't for Ray Harryhausen, then all of these other folks would not be where they are today. And because I talked to Tom many a times, and he loves Ray Harryhausen.
No, he's a legend.
And that's how he learned by paying attention to King Kong and Godzilla, all of those wonderful stop motion.
Yes, and George Powell. George Powell was a real innovator too, unbelievable. From Hungry to Hollywood, Time Machine, all these great movies. I tell you what.
And then we lost Nakajima this year too, who was the first suit actor. He played the original actor in Godzilla. Nakajima. I got to do some shows with him. He's a wonderful man.
You mentioned Harryhausen and how it just builds, what Tom did, it's just the same way with George, though. The Richard Matheson with what was left I Am Legend, and then there was Night of the Living Dead. It's not imitation; it's just building upon it. It's just amazing how it just permeates and changes, and it's like the Blob,
I think that real artists kind of like want to learn and sort of pay homage to their predecessors as well as incorporate their own creativity and then move forward. I mean, that's what really true good evolution is about, I think. And there's a creative evolution that happens with artists.
Absolutely. Red shirt, sir. In Star Trek, you'd be in trouble, dude. Red shirt. Question.
I'm a big Dr. Logan fan. One of my favorite characters.
Can you come a little closer, please?
I was just saying, I'm a big fan of Dr. Logan, probably one of my favorite characters in the film. Next to you guys, of course. But any stories you can share about working with the late great Mr. Richard Liberty?
Stories about Richard Liberty?
Yeah, the question was talking about Richard Liberty and how wonderful he was, who played Dr. Logan. It was such a great character. He was a lovely man. In fact, he called me a long time ago and he said, Lori, I don't know if you want to do these things or not with me, but I just went out and I go to these, it's called a convention, and I sign autographs, and then, people really like Day of the Dead, because we didn't know that people liked Day of the Dead for a long time as much as they did. And he said, you know, he was telling me about the conventions, and it wasn't as done like it is now, but it was a long time ago. He was fantastic to work with, and his part was complicated, and he really brought humor to that part, and he was a good actor. He had a lot of complicated lines, even like when he would stammer and stutter. I mean, that was in there, and he would, you know, really do George's work as it was written. He was an amazing man. I wish he was around to enjoy this. He would have loved it, and so would have Ralph.
He was an amazing actor. He took a batshit crazy role and made it so lovable.
He did. He made it lovable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there food? I said, is there food?
Can you hear me?
As long as you project like that, we got you.
I project, so yeah, that's the easy part. So when the movie first came out, it was probably the least well received of the original trilogy, but its legacy has really grown. How do you feel? What do you guys think about the legacy of the movie today versus its initial release?
Well, the original release was a big disappointment. I think to.
You need me to repeat it, or can you hear it?
He's responding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't.
Here, just talk.
I forgot what I was going to say.
About the releases.
The original.
Oh, yeah, it was, not received well, and it was a big disappointment, I know, to myself and to George and Sala also. Yeah,
Siskel and Ebert, didn't they kill it initially? Did Siskel and Ebert kind of kill it, or two thumbs down?
Yep.
Ebert
But-
went back though.
But he did, yes.
Yeah, he did go back.
But you know
Yeah,
what?
his word.
The way I've looked at it, and I know it's a cliche, but this movie is like a fine wine. It took time to age, and eventually, as John says, they went back, they re-looked at it. They listened. It was accused of being dark and too expository, too much dialogue, too much over this. And you know what? I'm sorry. I think the test is right here. I mean, I'm telling you, I can only speak for myself. I've worked, and we all have had careers. Okay, I don't know. I mean, I haven't talked to Laurie in a little while, and Tim, John, I saw probably the closest. I got to tell you, this is, to me, it's incredible. It's a family. I've written about it. I got a piece I wrote about George that maybe I'll do tomorrow, and it really revolves around this incredible man, his vision, and these wonderful people that I've been, for once in my life, for maybe 3-4 months in Western Pennsylvania. I really do. My wife will tell you this. I feel like this is my family, and I know if I called Laurie or Tim, hadn't talked to them in a year, it's like yesterday. I don't have that feeling with anything I've ever done. Honestly, it's just an amazing. I can't explain it. It's kind of mystical to me.
I think that not every one of us probably could do what you just suggested. And that goes for cast, crew, producers, line producers, whoever was involved on a set with George are still friends today. I don't know of anybody that has any kind of falling out or have lost any kind of affection or feelings toward another cast member or another grip, another sound guy, and we are all still friends. And I think that's a remarkable thing, and it means so much, I know, to all of us.
I was in Manchester across the pond again a year ago, and I saw David Ball, who was our line producer, who now lives in Wales. And David Ball was with a whole weekend with me, and I got to tell you, it was like yesterday. It was literally like yesterday. I mean, there was no, distance of 32 years. It's like we're back in the mine, and it astounds me. I am just overwhelmed by it, and I don't know how else to explain it. It's this mystical feeling that's been created that I've never had it with anything. And I think we're all on the same page with that. And I get a call from Bomba, and come on, and he was the crew, and wasn't he with Mr. Rogers for all those years? I love Nicky Tallow, and again, he calls me. He still calls me, and I haven't seen him, maybe in Jersey at one of those chillers, but I gotta tell you,
It's
from Nick Mastandria.
It's such a beautiful feeling. Such a beautiful feeling.
These people come into town and they give their friends a call, and I'm so happy to be one of those friends.
God, I can die now.
It's really because of you all, though, that we have gotten to, appreciate the movie, move on with the movie. The fact that you discovered it and it was special to you, and you kept, watching it and sharing with your friends, and that's why going to the shows and meeting all of you is such an honor. And because without you, we wouldn't be here, and being able to see our old friends and hang out, and the movie, you made the movie. And I always said that Day of the Dead, no offense to anybody, but that's the smart people's movie.
I think that's the perfect way to close the panel. I think you got it. That's great. Thank you, guys. You got one? We'll do one more question. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Do you prefer practical effects or CGI? And follow-up question, how were the practical effects on the set of Day of the Dead?
Well,
He's going to talk about his guts.
I felt that, Savini's work kind of told you how to use the effect, for developing your character almost. That sounds a little bizarre, but it was a real piece of work, to be having my guts, ripped out and seeing all that blood and stuff on the floor. I like it much better than, what are you calling it? DGI?
Oh, yeah, computer generated.
Computer generated. Yeah, and there's a little more of a, appreciation for what it took to be able to do that then, that they could do, today very easily, but it would look like, Disneyland.
One quick story, if I may, that I think really for me sums it up, and I think about 4 years after the film came out, and it was still in the netherworld, and who knew how it ultimately would be received. I was walking down Broadway in 55th Street, and I was heading south, and it's New York City. You got to be careful. And I look about a block south of me, and I see this lunatic staring at me. I got a bag over my shoulder. I'm trucking. I got a place to be. I got to be in an audition. And this guy starts sprinting at me, full speed. And I go, what's going on here? He got about 10 feet from me. And this is what I mean about family. At 10 feet, at a full throttle, I realized, my God, it's that lunatic Tom Savini. And he knew that, and he took a leap in the air, and he laid his body out parallel to the ground, feet, head, and he knew I would drop my bag and catch him, and I did. He didn't come close to the ground. Tom will tell you the same thing. That to me is the essence. It's the essence of the trust of the work, and that's what it's all about. It's trusting George, all of us working together in the moment. It was so wonderful. I mean,
and
God,
him trusting us also.
It was just so wonderful.
Give us these words.
So wonderful. I'm blessed. That's all I can say. I'm just blessed.
As an actor too, it is better for an actor to have the practical there rather than the CGI, because you have to pretend a lot,
It's visceral.
Yeah, it's visceral, it's there.
And it required, this particular film required that kind of visceral response. And it does help. It does help to have the thing, A lot of actors, I for one love a prop. And if it's my gut spilling out or a razor blade being cutting somebody open, it's all very, very useful, because it's the best way to tell the story. And which is another thing George certainly understood, because that's what we're doing. We're telling stories. But his
But I wanted to also, but I wanted to say about the CGI. Remember, I was talking about artists and how you kind of take it to the next level, and I do respect the people that have taken it into the CGI. I mean, that's really cool too, you know. And I think that even a mixture would be, you know, good. Actually, we had a little CGI when I'm climbing up, going up the silo. There wasn't an opening there, so they put that in there somehow with the computer, I guess. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
But my daughter, you know, my daughter was she was doing this project. She was all you know, dotted up, and she was doing a project with these guys that were making this game, and she was acting all the female characters, and I think it was Grand Theft Auto. So all the women in that are my daughter. But she was doing the whole CGI. I mean, you know, actors there's a lot of work for actors doing that kind of stuff too, especially if you're good in movement.
Yeah, our technology allows us to do amazing things. When it's in the right venue, when it's part of the right kind of movie making, CGI is terrific. In our time, not a lot of that was happening yet. Mats were happening, correct, right. And so when it's right, it's right. And for us, it was right to be honest and real. That's the word.
Perfect.
There you have it.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Any questions for tomorrow?